me out the call.
Okay, let us begin. This is a meeting of the Cape Cod Gateway Airport Commission. Today is Tuesday, April 15, 2025. It is 4 p.m. and we are currently in the airport conference room at the Cape Cod Gateway Airport. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The meeting of the Cape Cod Gateway Commission is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20. I must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, to please make their presence known. Not seeing anybody, we will go immediately to roll call.
Thank you. Chairman Flores?
Here.
Vice Chairman Dia?
Here.
Clerk Wiles?
Here.
Commissioner Beworth isn't here today. Commissioner Bailey?
Here.
Commissioner DeGeorge?
Here.
Commissioner Melo? Here. And Yarmouth Representative Christine Freeland?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is minutes from the previous meeting of February 18th, 2025. Has everyone had a chance to look at those?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Are there any questions or issues of concern that anyone would like to bring up before I entertain a motion to approve them? Could I have a motion?
So moved.
A second. Once again, I'm not hearing any discussion. We'll take a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes of February 18, 2025, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is a vote. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Is there anyone here in the audience? There is folks present, but no one is ready or willing to speak at this moment. So there's no need for number 6, which is our response to public comment. So their reports from the subcommittees will go to Subcommittee Chair Norm Weil. I don't believe there was one, but you can confirm.
We did not have a meeting.
Okay. And the same with Subcommittee Chair of Infrastructure and Marketing, Joe DeGeorge.
Yep, we did not have one.
Okay. Then we will enter into public session, where first we would take a look at old business, and today we don't have any. So we can move on to item number 9, which is new business, and not seeing any. We'll go right to item number 10, which is a report of special committees, the first being a noise report from July 1st until October. And Christine Lonsberry, who handles that for us, will be giving us that report.
Great, thank you. Matt has the slide book here for me, and you can go along. You have all the information that was provided. So for the first quarter of 2025, January, February, and March. In January, we had 3 noise complaints from the town of Yarmouth, and from one complainant and one unknown. I'm going to go over a little bit what that is in a moment. In February, we had 1 from Barnstable, 1 from Hyannis, 1 from Yarmouth, 1 unknown. In March, 1 from Eastham, 1 from Yarmouth, and 6 unknown. So this is kind of a unique situation. We've not come across this before. So we had some anonymous complaints. Some of them, one of them didn't really have any location information. Some of them, other ones came from a group and didn't have specific locations, were more like a general complaint. So we had to do some of the unknown, unfortunately, as to where they were complaining for. So we did add a little blurb in there so we can recognize that, as well as we added a box and specifically removing what are the complaints from unknown area. So it's hard to address something if we don't know what we're looking at. One of the big things we look at is with a noise complaint, you're calling, where, I'm in Hyannis and it's 10:30 and an aircraft flies over me. We've got a location, a person, a time, and a description of the incident. So a lot of this is lacking in there, so it makes it a little bit difficult. So we definitely, included 16 noise complaints from a total of 4 complainants. However, we're kind of including information that's kind of hard to track. Again, we've never had unknown before. One anonymous complaint for the person and the location as well.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Members of the commission, does anybody have a
When you
question?
say unknown, they don't identify themselves, they leave a voicemail?
So no, actually this is in our portal on our vector system. And so one of the things that they were able to do is one just had a person's initials with no other identifiers. And it does require you put in a location, but you can just with this put in Barnstable, Mass. And it'll bring up, the general Latin long for Barnstable, Mass, but not a specific area. So that's where it's coming from, not from a call or an email.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you. Yes, sir.
is it possible to keep track of the time of those calls, those anonymous calls? So we might see a grouping of time and as that might relate to some activity?
So yes, with these, they do enter in a time frame, and you'll notice that we have the details for January, March, and February. Some of those contain, citizens' information, so we don't have them up here for their privacy. So we do have time frames that we do have on there. So, go ahead.
It's kind of a broad time frame,
Yes.
so I'm wondering if they bunch up together a little closer to each other, if there's some pattern of calls from unknowns, but if they're all coming within 15 minutes of each other or something like that, that might be telling to us about what's really going on.
Sure, and these are specific to flights that are considered training or currency flights, making sure the pilots, they go out, they do their training, they keep their license current. So this is basically focused on that. So we've been given, some of them have been given information so we could find it, others, like again, are that just general spread of time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr.
I have
Chairman?
a
Yes, sir.
So the 16 that we have up top here,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have the unknown, the incomplete complaints, it's 8.
Yep.
Is this 8 in the 16?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And it appears to be quite a jump from the first quarter of '24,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And there's no unusual activity that we are aware of? I know that like last year, we had a runway closed and that changed the traffic pattern. And we saw an increase, and we expected it, but
Sure, yeah, last year we had, the runway
Yeah.
open from the 2023, and we did definitely.
yeah.
This is specific to training flights, so
Okay.
flights, which, again, we've not had before, and it's, a very much a concentration, and an individual and a group is specific to that, so.
So when the calls come in, you're associating with a training flight, so you know that it's a training flight. Are you able to see the track and the altitudes?
I am, so first, they don't come in as calls, they're actually entered on the website,
Yeah,
so,
I see.
and they do give information, because of the way people are now able to track with NextGen and apps.
Sure.
They have a tail number. So
Okay.
we do find them, and one of the things that management had me do, and I do always, is I can run through the track, and when I run through the track, I can do it on a 1-second basis. It gives me altitudes all the way through. So in reviewing those, I reviewed them by myself. Actually, Matt and Mike looked at it with me as well, get the whole perspective, pilot, air traffic control, and there was nothing that we found that was out of the ordinary.
So when you say that, in my last question,
Sure.
that they're anonymous, they don't give a location or whatever, the location really isn't that important because you got the time and you can see what, it's not like we have a lot of traffic here. So you can generally see, and by doing that, you've been able to identify the training flights and you've been able to determine that there is the normal altitudes, it's not the exceptional going.
Sure, and the reason that we say, and I understand your perspective from that, is that, what we look at is, we're not sure how these are located, and one of the big things that we look at is if you, Mark, are at your home and you have a low airplane, that's right there. This seems to be more looking at potentially, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, going back and looking and finding these and saying, this is bad, this is too low, this shouldn't happen, as opposed to an actual event where somebody had a disturbance.
But you're not seeing that, is what I'm asking. You're not seeing aircraft that are too low that shouldn't have been, you're seeing normal operations.
Correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On your report that has some detail and on the March report, you name Save Our Cape as the name.
The complainant.
I looked it up as that they have a website,
Yes.
a very formal website, very detailed, but no names, nobody associated with it. Said they're copyright, so I went to look up the copyright, and there's no copyright recorded for them.
So it's a generic thing, we don't know who was a member of this group.
Again, you know, it's.
Correct, and as you probably saw, they're focusing on training flights, again, which is not something, I've done this for 22 years, and I've really never seen this be an area of concern. And if you see on there too, it's got some screenshots of what I was saying, like the apps that people can have, as well as like they're looking to track people's information as well.
And the pictures that they show on the website is mostly out over the water, but
Christina, do we know if the folks whose names we have, who are actually identifying themselves as complainants, do we know if they also are members of this Save Our Cape group? There's no
No.
way of knowing that.
I do not, and we have answered, so in the portal I can do an answer. What I like to do is, in addition to in the portal, because I'm not sure how it goes back to people, I also email them, because they have an email address, so they get it in 2 different ways. So in that, we've been addressing it, but they're not identifying themselves at all. And they did have a question as to, you know, we were looking at, this is how we normally take complaints. We look at the FAA website, how they take complaints. Also, industry standard, how do they take complaints? It's not usually this kind of generic from a group. Doesn't mean we can't look at it. It's just it's not falling in the kind of the boxes that we usually check. So it's a little more difficult. But I make sure, like I said, they get it from 2 different ways, but they're not giving us any identifying information. And again, it's hard to extrapolate the area that they're looking at, because in some of these, even I'll tell you, like the Eastham, it said Eastham and Wellfleet. You know, an aircraft left here, so doing some training over that area. So I had to pick one or the other, but it's just so broad.
Well, my concern is that even some of the folks that identify themselves as anonymous, which is very difficult to respond to somebody, coupled with a group that Save Our Cape, which in and of itself, even though it has a name, is anonymous for all intents and purposes. I wish there was a way that those folks who have an issue or have a concern would identify themselves so that we can work with them face to face, and it's much easier to get a solution and a resolution to a particular issue, as opposed to, you know, hiding behind a website or hiding behind anonymous. You know, anonymity doesn't help us. I mean, we want to do the best that we possibly can.
And the Save Our Cape does have it, they include an email, and we have corresponded with somebody with Save Our Cape. The anonymous one was just anonymous. It was 2 initials, no phone number, no email. Obviously, we can't really do anything about that.
Also, Save Our Cape does give you an identifying name.
No,
Email.
they give us an email address,
Email.
just email.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I guess, you know, you answered the first question which I had was, you know, Eastham. Secondly, I mean, I've told you before that one time I called in a complaint was literally, because I saw it with my own eyes, plane came up Glenwood, turned left over my house, and then proceeded in. And yet the shot that I was given from, you know, your data was that they'd come in straight over Great Island and up through Lewis Bay and into the airport. And so I was shocked at the time because I actually raised the question with you, was this correct? Because this was the most unusual low-flying flight I've ever seen. And actually, for a period of time there, maybe they got the message because there were several planes that did seem to use that same kind of route on a regular basis. I also think, I have no idea who the Save Our Cape group is, but I have been hearing, at least from my neighbors, a lot that they have been bothered, even from people up in Yarmouth Port, that area, about the training flights, and I'm really believing they are training flights. And so it doesn't surprise me that you've seen an uptick in reports, whether anonymous or whatever, but that's been some of the controversy. And unfortunately, I've told you, a lot of the people who I know have given up filing reports or complaints. They don't feel they go anywhere. And that but I think these training flights are creating a problem for you. They're creating a problem in a number of areas, because I've even heard some people in Barnstable Village, and even as far east, almost into South Yarmouth and things like that. And I also know there's a lot of concern raised, particularly after the helicopter tour flight in Downing in New York City, about having helicopter tours over basically what is the busy area on the Cape in the summer, with people on the beaches, people, around and all of that. And so I think people are very concerned about what some of these newer activities here are, and so I just need to mention that.
Sure, and I'd like to address that if you don't mind.
Yeah, no.
So specifically with that flight track, I know that was about 2.5 years ago, and we did address with you and with the company. So part of that is, yes, what you were seeing, and you were seeing, I think we're kind of missing, because there was a flight track that had come down a traffic pattern that you don't usually see there, came from the north and was coming to that, so they did come around a different way. Part of this is like the simple, I don't understand, the curvature of the earth based on how they're doing the flight tracking. So that is something that, we looked at, we went through with them, we spent, probably a good, month or so kind of going back and forth. They were verifying how everything works, and they did verify that we are getting correct information. Matt and I have done conference calls with them a couple of different times. So I really, I haven't seen anything like that. Is it perfect? Definitely not. But it definitely did have the area that it was in. I know you saw a sharp turn, but again, it's kind of hard to.
I was out in my yard looking up at it. I mean, I could have waved to them. I was glad I was fully dressed, kind of thing. But it's interesting, after filing the complaints, however, that path stopped. I didn't see it. I'd seen it a few times, and then after the complaint, it actually stopped.
And that path was not an appropriate path. It was a path that we don't see as often.
Okay.
So then when they're coming in they're coming from the north. It's a little bit different than what you would usually see coming from the south.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, there are different traffic patterns. Mark knows. But the other thing is too, is that I think that, in the 22 years that I've been here, I've addressed all of our noise complaints that come in. And while I do hear from you quite frequently that people don't want to call because they don't feel like anything is done, I think that, we're looking at what are they looking to have done.
Right.
I answer the complaints, we give them the information, and sometimes it's hard because we can't change things. We can't make a plane not fly over an area where they have a pre-established path. They're in altitudes that I'm very mindful of. Maybe it's uncomfortable for the person underneath it, but unless they're actually violating any FAA regulations, we can't stop that. So again, and I know this is ad nauseum for me, but if you have people in your area that would like to call and register this, we want to hear from them. Because I'm very curious as to what they're feeling nothing's being done. I take umbrance to that because I have have done this for years, and I make sure that I call everyone back. I've met with people, and to me this is it's a really big deal to hear that, because I want to make sure from my perspective what I'm doing for the town, what I'm getting paid for, is being completed. And again, there's some things we can't change, but I certainly am here for the residents of Yarmouth. I grew up in Yarmouth. I've been in the Cape, 56 years. And I've lived in a flight path. I live in another one now in Mashpee, so I definitely have a lot of empathy and sympathy for what they're feeling.
No, it is, I understand, I absolutely understand that, but as I said, it's what the public perception is, and I think with the training flights and that, there's now an increased, change again in some of their thought process about it all, so just giving you
Thank you.
feedback about it, thank you.
Marguerite?
This may be a naive question, but are we getting credit for these supposed violations from aircraft that emanate from another airport, say Chatham or,
So being a
or
public use
Barnstable?
airport, yes, exactly, so we're a public use airport, and one of the things that I actually spoke with a gentleman about the other day is, he said, I tracked this plane from Plymouth, they came down here and they did a training flight. So, being public use, we are required to be open 24/7. We are required to receive all air traffic, we can't limit, we can't, and do any violations, we cannot, put any fines on it. And it was kind of funny, I just chatting with him, and he said, well, can't they do it at their own airport? So the only thing that I could think to tell him is, I'm teaching you how to drive, and I'm only gonna let you drive in your neighborhood. I'm gonna do circles around the neighborhood, and now I'm gonna give you a driver's license, and I'm gonna send you out to the Mass Pike. It's the same thing with pilots. Do we want them to only know how to land and depart at their airport? We want them to have experience in all these airports. Conversely, I'm sure there's some airports getting noise complaints or training complaints, people from our airport, because they're gonna go out and do that training. So it's kind of like, I don't even know if it's a credit kind of thing, because we're encouraging them to come, but we're also putting pilots out there that are gonna go to Chatham, Plymouth, New Bedford, and do the same thing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to acknowledge Christina for the work that you do,
Mhm.
right? I know that you're very diligent about this stuff, your tracking is excellent, and please don't take offense at comments where it says nothing's being done, because it's not a reflection of that you're not doing anything, it's that the planes keep flying. That's what they're saying when they say
Yes.
nothing's being done.
Yep.
Right, so it's not a reflection on you
Thank
at
you.
all.
I appreciate
and
that.
we really appreciate it.
But I'm very passionate about it, so
Yes.
I
No,
want them to
thank
know
you for
that
being that
I'm
way.
doing my part.
Yeah.
Christina, no, we appreciate, obviously, your due diligence, if you will, in terms of any complaint.
Thank
And I've been made aware of that more often than not. I do have one final question. I'm just curious, the training flights, are they mostly originating through Cape Air training, or are there other schools that are training that we might perhaps just have a chat with to find out what routes they're using, or whatever the case might be? Is that a
Certainly.
feasible thing to do?
Absolutely. Cape Air does them. We have, I know that, for instance, there's an aero club, and a lot of people belong, and they take an instructor out with them. But we also have some coming from other airports. And one of the things that, we did notice is that they're following the rules. They're at an altitude that's appropriate, and I know it is different when, you're doing your touch and goes, and you're, in a traffic pattern, and base leg downwind, I'm trying to remember all the terms. So it is something different, and the gentleman that I spoke with in Hyannis, he moved in there when the runway was shut down, and, so he, I had a great conversation with him. I must say, 99% of the people I talk with, they're so wonderful, it's so much easier in the voice.
Sure.
However, it's a combination of two. We work very closely with the chief pilot for Cape Air. He
Good.
is extremely responsive. If they ever find, for instance, they try to not ever fly training flights during our quiet hours.
Sure.
They're not required. They can do it whenever. But if we have someone that does it, he's right on it. Our scheduling team shouldn't have done that. We'll take care of it. They are so responsive. It's wonderful.
What about others?
Realistically, honestly, like I said, before this quarter, this is not something I've had a lot of issue with.
Okay.
Those training flights, the ones that I had were usually off hours, and that was more of a concern.
Final question,
Yeah, one
please.
final thing. I think that's part of what's creating a lot of this havoc to some degree. I think people are anxious about the idea that it's training flights, so how experienced are these pilots? Will they indeed crash, their area? And then the overflight in terms of the time, because they really aren't the times that they had been anticipating normal flights. In other words, some of your scheduled flights, people are used to, okay, I know between this time and that time, there'll be a flight at a certain time. And I think that may be what be causing some of the escalation in the complaints.
As a clarification, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
these training flights are not inexperienced pilots
I know,
flying by
but-
themselves. There was an instructor who was very, very experienced.
Yeah, I know,
and
but
so-
still, some of the air crashes that have taken place, there've been a number of oddball things happen in the last while, and people worry. So I think that's part of the general I think that's part of the general perception too on the ground. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christina, excellent report.
Okay, thank you.
Could I entertain a,
Symposium.
oh, I'm sorry, yeah, there is a noise symposium update, did you want to share
Sure,
this?
absolutely. So
Okay.
I included.
That's separate from this report, though.
Yes, it
Okay.
is. There's a
Before-
couple more
Can
slides.
you just hold that, where I was
Okay.
going? I wanted to have someone make the motion to approve the noise report as presented for January, February, and March of 2025. Someone make that motion?
So moved.
Second. Second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now let's move to the symposium update.
Great, thank you so much, I appreciate it. So I was very lucky to have been sent to the UC Davis. It's the Aviation Noise and Emissions Symposium. They've done this since 1985, and they're really, when it comes to studying emissions, noise, they're really in the forefront. And they do this symposium once a year, and it looks at noise mitigation, emissions, it talks about fuel, some of the things that and you have more detailed, and I can answer anything on that. Some of the things they look at, noise, we had a meeting with all the noise officers, just that. So it was great, we could have a lot of collaboration, feedback. I will say I was really disappointed. There were two sessions the FAA was going to be part of, and unfortunately, they were forbidden to travel, and they were forbidden to give their report of the Aircraft Noise Advisory Committee. So, those are definitely some information. They gave the best they could. We took a look at noise impact, what new noise reports look like. They showed what people are doing. They're becoming very technical. They have specific systems, systems. It's noise and operating systems where they gather the information and we can do reports out of it. As well as we had a great session on flight school challenges and opportunities. So post-COVID, we've had a lot of pilots retire. There was a shortage, I know, due to some changes in hours of how many hours pilots needed to have. So that means that we have an influx of newer pilots, people needing training. So it's kind of like it's hard. We don't want, obviously, issues with the training, but without the training, we're not gonna be able to fly. And that's, we think down here at Cape Air, but people are gonna move up and move on. So they're the people that are flying you JetBlue across the country or American, to Europe for your vacation, so it's always helpful. But it was excellent. They do a great job every year, and I really appreciate you guys sending me. I went in 2005, and this was amazing.
Great,
Excellent.
good to hear, good to know.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from any members of the commission? Okay, not hearing any. Christina, thank you so much for
Thank you.
the noise
I
report and
appreciate
for
it.
attending the symposium and sort of a professional development opportunity for you, so good for you.
Definitely.
Which we support wholeheartedly. Okay, next on the agenda is the Yarmouth representative comments.
Obviously, one set of
Chris,
comments. Yeah, sorry. One set of the comments you've already addressed that I would have made, but the other one is the town's continued concern about the progress from the administration, about the progress on the PFAS and and the fact that they've got some analysis, and I know there's going to be a presentation tonight at Yarmouth Board of Selectmen on some of their consultants' work on the environmental things. And I know you're going to talk about this further under your update, so I won't go any further than that, but just to say that it remains a major concern from the town of Yarmouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, moving on to updates, and there are a number of them today. I'm going to turn this over to Airport Manager Matt Delia. Matt, could you begin with the first bullet item?
Absolutely.
Introduction of Mr. Nelson.
The first one is our introduction of Michael Nelson. Mike joined us on Monday of last week. Yes. And he has been going through a robust and rigorous training program and overview. Mike, well, actually, I'll let Mike say a few words before I continue. So Mike, go ahead.
I just want to thank you for bestowing the privilege and honor of working with this team. Fantastic people and serving this airport in a way that I don't know if I'll be able to fill the shoes of Matt and Katie, but you know, people like Christina and all of you have been so welcoming. And Matt has run me through a great program so far and will continue to do so. I'm just blessed to be here, and I will do everything within my power to meet your expectations.
Well, Mike, we're thankful that you were available on such a short notice, because not only do you bring experience, many years in the airport operations business, if you will, having run towers and other ancillary kinds of responsibilities, but also the management side, which you've had some experience in working with that, I'm sure, until we fill the position on a permanent basis, that I think we are in good hands. I feel very confident.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely. So I think what Mike said kind of speaks for himself. He is a great person and has continued to show up with energy and ask questions and learn and get into things. And I will say, one of the major benefits is his perspective from the air traffic control, specifically for noise complaints. Christina does a great job with that program, so I appreciate what you said, Mark. She really does, and she would often come and ask questions from the flight perspective, from my flight instruction experience in flying. And it's great to have Mike in that as well, to see another side of it, and also with the connections, right? Because one of the things we've been working on is making sure Mike is connected with the right people for the airport side, but he has a whole other network of resources that can help support us in other ways, which has been very beneficial. So we've been progressing through on a path to cover all of the buckets. Projects, airfield compliance, staff overview, town processes, tenant relations and agreements, and environmental. And then within that, a number of sub-buckets, and part of that has been organic, whereas we go through each day, Mike has been shadowing me, and we're into it, and some of it is scheduled. Right now, he's working on the AAAE Airport Security Coordinator training, so that he can provide support for Christina from the airport management side for security purposes. That is it's a training, so Mike is getting through it and doing that. So some of those are formal things. Access to the movement area, because of his experience in the air traffic control, he has a leg up on that, but moving through that. And other things are, as we go, we're going over them, and then we have a list of all the pieces we're going through so that he understands. Last week we did a kind of a deep dive in the budget. Norm came in as the finance chair and sat in with us. We went line item by line item, and Chris has been available on call. We'll be reaching out to him shortly for some project things, because those have been dynamic as we're in grant season for the FAA, so I'll give you the full rundown on the projects in a few minutes. And we have time set up with Katie next week to go over a number of items that she was primarily handling, to make sure that the handoff there is smooth from what I was picking up. So we continue to work through those, and I'm wholly confident that on April 25th, Mike will be ready to go, and he'll have my phone number, Katie's number, and Chris's number, and we'll be able to support him.
That's basically 9 days of a wake-up call, so times are moving.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm sure that, you know, as much information and as much guidance that Mike can absorb between now and then he does, and we'll be here, obviously, to add additional support. And this is an interim kind of basis that we'll be dealing with, but you know, as I've said before, some of the main issues we've already reviewed. I've been down and had meetings 3 or 4 times already relative to the budgets, relative to PFAS-related issues, relative to our tent outside, and of course the 139 inspection that's ongoing right now, which is you know, that's an all-day, all-night kind of project for a few days. So I think we're on top of things, and it makes me feel good as chairman of the commission. I think it does other fellow commissioners. So I'll turn it back to you. And, begin with, I guess, Mike, do you want to say anything else about your tower experience, or for the sake of the audience and that you're listening? I mean, you've got 30 years as lead tower guy up in Logan, so it's not like you're coming from Podunk you know, forever. So you've got some serious experience.
I've been very fortunate, especially for this role, because prior to entering into air traffic, I was also in construction management, project management for a few years, so that helps. And due to experiences residentially, I've bought and sold some properties, fixed them up, things like that, 90% by myself. And then in 1990, I became an air traffic controller in Oklahoma, or training to be one, and went to Worcester Tower as my first assignment, just a couple of weeks after Mr. Guillot had left Worcester Tower. And then I went to Boston Tower as a controller and traffic manager, and then Boston Tracon, or approach control, as a controller. Then when they closed and went up to Merrimack, New Hampshire, I came down to Cape Tracon as a supervisor, went back to Boston Tower.
And for the sake of our audience, when you say Tracon, because
Approach control, departure control, arrival. And so, and then from Cape Tracon, I went to Boston Tower again as a supervisor and did some support manager duties also, and then went to Cape Tracon, or Cape Approach Control again, to become the air traffic manager there, with some temporary assignments to labor relations, and also a temporary stint at Boston Tower as the air traffic manager there. Then when Cape Tracon closed and moved to Boston Approach up in Merrimack, New Hampshire, I became a labor relations specialist and district manager of operations for New England, upstate New York. So I oversaw all the facilities, the FAA and contract facilities for the region, and ancillary duties, and then ended my FAA career at Boston Tower as the manager. And then after retirement, went to Hyannis as a controller and a air traffic manager. And then I received a call from you.
well, you bring a terrific background and a wealth of information, so I just wanted to make sure our audience, and people do actually watch this on video, some
Yes.
watch it live, that they know who you are, so that we have a level of confidence, if you will, that things are in good hands for not only our position, which is to set policy, but the folks who are implementing that policy are
Yes.
qualified and know the direction that we want to take the airport as we move things forward. So with that being said, thank you for sharing that, and I'll give it back to you, Matt. You're welcome.
Sure. So continuing on with our updates, the next one is my favorite week of the year, our FAA annual Part 139 certification safety inspection. We kicked off this morning with our inspector, and actually a new inspector who's here for training, observing. So our primary inspector conducts the training, and when you're becoming an inspector, you attend a number of those to watch, provide maybe some feedback, but our primary inspector has obviously been working through this. We started with a review of our certification manual, some general programs, overview of the airport and the FAA, what they're working on, review our airport master record, roll right into our movement area driver training, which is anyone that can drive vehicles on the runways and taxiways. And then from there we go into a couple of things that'll happen kind of sequentially. The interview with the air traffic control tower manager. They'll do that separate from the airport because they want to get the Yelp review on the airport to see how communication is, how things are working at the airport, how programs are operated. So our tower manager met with the inspector shortly after lunch. They go out on the airfield for a daytime inspection. So one of our ops staff takes the inspector around, and they're there not to inspect the airport, they're there to observe our inspector doing our inspection program of the airport. They will likely identify things, whether it's grass that grows in front of a sign, or a light that might be out, or growth on a fence that would become discrepancies. As you know, every year there are a couple of those. And really their goal is to help us improve our safety level. They should not come in and leave after 3 days and say, everything's great, here you go. They should provide a couple of discrepancies with timelines. That keeps us moving forward. And then a litany of recommendations. And those could be things that are easy and simple to implement, or larger things that we want to consider. One came up this morning about the way that we certify movement area operators. We exceed the standard for the training that's required. And they said, you know, we really like that. Obviously your requirement is here. We like to see you do this. Here's another step you might consider in the future. Again, far exceeding the standard, we already do that, but a recommendation. So they'll give us a bunch of those, and we use those over the course of the year to improve our program. So of the recommendations, some of those will be implemented, some would be considered and may or may not be. But all of the discrepancies that are listed are corrected, and then we follow up with the inspector. So we kicked that off this morning. Right now, they're meeting with a couple of the firefighters. They ask firefighters similar questions to the controllers. Does airport management provide you the gear that you need? Do you get good training? Questions like that. And then they do a tell and show, where the firefighter has to walk around the fire truck, point to each cabinet, and explain every tool, device in the cabinet, then open the door, show that they were correct and didn't miss anything, and go to the next cabinet. They'll go over the flow rates of agent and water coming out of the nozzles, all of those things. We'll take a break, which is how we're fitting this meeting in. And then this evening around 8 o'clock, we'll go back out on the airfield and do a night lighting inspection. So they'll do the same inspection we would do at night. Again, they're riding along, watching how we do our inspection. So tonight will be a late night, around 11 o'clock, we'll wrap up. We'll be back at 8 o'clock tomorrow. We'll roll through the fueling facilities and then look at the records associated with fueling facilities. After lunch, we'll be reviewing our wildlife control plan. They'll do an interview with USDA, who provides support for wildlife with us. And then we'll roll into some other training records for the staff. Thursday, again, we start around 8. We'll review additional training records for the staff. We will do a visit to the perimeter fence line. They'll look at that. They review our FAA-funded snow and ice control equipment. They'll look at our sand bay. They could check the sieve on the sand to make sure it's the right specification for the sand that we put on taxiways and runways during the winter. And then they'll review our work order system, our information management system. And mid-afternoon or so, we'll do an out briefing where they'll sit down and they review each section. So at some point, they'll make an unannounced call on the emergency notification system. The stopwatch will be running. Fire truck has 3 minutes to get out there and spraying water. I have every confidence in the world in the team, because we practice that and we practice it and we practice it. And that truck will be out of that building in 45 to 55 seconds, no matter which one of our staff members is there. And they can be anywhere on the runway complex, even further than we have to go, which is the midpoint of the runway, spraying water in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. They have that down to a science. So I'm confident in that. So we'll progress through that. That out briefing becomes the slideshow that we share. We'll share at the next commission meeting. We always walk through and discuss those types of things. So that's really the highlight of the inspection. And I do just want to say thank you to everybody on the staff. All 3 departments touch this. It's a very invasive inspection, because they're there to make sure we're safe. So they're looking at all of the programs. It should not just be, oh, that document looks good. They ask questions and they dig, and that's important, the fact that the staff is able to respond to those questions. So maintenance does a ton of work to get the facility ready and in shape all year. Operations and maintenance reviewing their records, and then the office staff all have a role to support it. One of the things we submitted today was our master record update. It includes based aircraft. That's one of the parts of Christina's job that isn't really related to noise and security, but she does it twice a year, really for the state, but it serves this purpose too. It supports our inspection. So the administration, operations, and maintenance, everyone has stepped up to help this, and it really shows the team aspect. And the other benefit is, right now, it's a great course for Mike to be able to sit in and kind of see all of the operations of the airfield from inside the fence perspective. So that's the inspection. You know, we hope to have a good report in May to be able to provide the full thing, but so far it's going very well.
Well, based on past practice and past reports, I'm sure that hopefully we will get another good report, a solid one. And I'm happy to hear you say that the number 1 priority in this airport is safety. Not only for passengers, but for employees and for anybody who's within the boundaries of our fence line. Safety is number 1 in terms of what it is that we want to focus on. So that being said, thank you, and I know you have a long neck, so keep it moving.
Sure.
This is particularly important to our airport, because if we don't maintain our Part 139 certification, we can't have commercial operations here.
Correct.
So this is not just a safety check, you know, it's actually related to the lifeblood of the airport. So thank you so much for the dedication and excellent work you've had in the past with these types of certifications.
And Vice Chair Gio has a vested interest in this because, as we all know, he flies to DC a lot. So we want to make sure that American continues to
June
be.
19th.
It is a great point.
You know the date
I
and
know the
time.
date.
Yes, June 19th is the start of the service, and the certification is the basis of that, right? So everything that the airlines provide for us, the connectivity for the community, relies on this certification. And so tying into it all year, it's why it is so important.
Right.
And it's why, you know, everyone on the team takes it seriously, because if we don't have that, it's a significant piece of the airport that would not be able to exist.
We don't have JetBlue, we don't have American if we don't have it. So it's critical to our,
Even Cape Air.
even Cape Air. I mean, it's, we're,
Anyone put it on?
it is what it is, so it's very critical. So with that being said, we will move on to the financial update. This is the FY '25 to date review. Also on the proposed FY '26 operating budget. And with Matt leaving on the 25th, I had asked Norm as subcommittee chairperson of the Finance Committee and many years of accounting experience and running financial groups for Fortune companies to be much more intimately involved. So thank you for coming out of that meeting and spending many hours going over the budget. And I know as we move forward, having a conversation with you and others at Town Hall, when it comes time to actually present the budgets, I believe Mark Miller, who's Director of Finance, will be for a whole lot of different reasons. He will be presenting it line by line, but probably Norm will be there, I will be there, Mike will be there, and any other commissioner that would want to attend. We'll find out what those dates are, but it'll be sometime probably May, June. We can probably have those, well, you can let us know when they are. So with that being said, I just want to acknowledge Norm and the work that he's been doing. Thank you.
So for the budget, I'll start with FY '26 because that is the short one. So as you mentioned, Chairman Flores, we're on track for the Town Council presentation during late May, June timeframe as part of the town budget presentation. Mark Milne, the Director of Finance for the town, will be making the presentation for the full budget. Mike will be able to answer questions there as they come up, and we've been working on going through that. We'll cover that when we meet with Katie next week as well, so that he is prepared for that. As soon as we get the dates for when that's scheduled, we'll share that. If it's while I'm here, we'll do that. If not, Mike will be prepared to share that with you.
And for any preliminary meetings, you know, any of the budget meetings we have, we make sure that I, along with Norm, know what the dates are. In the event that we do want to sit in on those ourselves, because he and I will be at those presentations. Not required, just
No,
put it out there if you can make it
definitely.
fine.
No question.
We can absolutely do that. For the fiscal year '25 budget update, we'll go through the slides here. I do appreciate the commission. I know I sent this last night. It was pretty late when it went out, but so I appreciate that. For the
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
I also ask, and I want to make it an official request, that any report that we're going to deal with at a commission meeting comes to us at a minimum of 48 hours before. The same way we have to post for a public meeting. I know, for example, that came last night. Christina, your report, which was excellent, came this morning. Would like to have a little bit of time to digest it in case we have questions, issues, or concerns. So if we can make that a rule of thumb, 48 hours before any presentation like that, we get copies of it.
Sure.
Thank you.
For the revenues here, you can see across the purple lines there, charge for services, fees, grants, other revenues, permits, and then down at the bottom, we are close at this point, so we're about 75% of the way through the budget. We're close to meeting our projection for revenues for the year, ahead in some areas there, so that's a good thing. We want to exceed those. We budget in a conservative basis based on our leases, and then as we go through the year, it's good to see us exceeding those revenue predictions. So we work through that. The one thing that I will call attention to is the renewable energy. Mary is investigating this because it does seem like we're behind last year, so there appears to be an accounting thing with finance with getting that into the report. So I just wanted to put that on your radar that we're looking into that because we're behind where we were last year. And I feel like we should not be that far behind at this point. So,
Nothing's really changed, has it, from last year?
no,
So it sounds like a reporting issue.
yeah, I think that there are some reports that have just not been reconciled yet to bring it over into this report. So I asked Mary to.
Is that reconciliation on our part or from?
The town finance,
Town?
right? So we would get the reports, get the revenue, and then it would be credited to the account. And so in that process, it appears that, and that sometimes lags with this particular one, but right now it appears to be lagging more than it lagged last year. So that's what stuck it on the radar. So I just wanted to call it to your attention.
And we have a point person in town hall who handles that and gets us that information.
Mary coordinates with someone in finance, but I don't know who.
We should know that.
Mary's pretty knowledgeable
Yeah.
of this stuff.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave this slide, Matt, can you talk a little bit about what's going on with grants? So we're down 15,000 in grants. I was just wondering if.
The grants is, that's the TSA grant. So right now, the total we're budgeting for is 50,000. So we've realized 35,000. So about 30%. So I would anticipate that that would make itself up to the full 50. We would use that for the year.
So we're expecting
More payment.
Oh, we haven't been notified that we're not getting any.
Right,
Because
no.
a lot of grants have been canceled under this.
Yeah, we have not had any grants that have been canceled.
Okay, good.
This is a grant that's in place. We just haven't billed on it yet
Okay.
to make that number, but
And these are actuals through what, 4/8?
this is 4/8,
Yeah,
yes. There are 2 items later where it's March 31st, and I'll point that out just because of the way the reporting works.
Oh, thank you.
It's highlighted in red.
Not in anyways.
I have a question. Sure. Just for my own benefit, what is our fiscal year run?
So we go July 1st through June 30th. So right now, we're a little over 75% of the way through the year.
And it's always referenced as the ending year, so we are in fiscal year 26. Fiscal year 27 begins July
No.
1.
No.
No, no.
January,
No, we're fiscal 25.
25, excuse me. I'm a year ahead.
I'm sorry.
No.
That's
Way
why-
ahead.
That's why I asked this question, because
Austin
last
year
time
somewhere.
it came out, we had like a couple of months difference in ending.
Well, the federal is September.
Yeah.
So as of April 15th, we're 79% through the fiscal year.
Yes,
Correct. Which ends as of June 30th.
right. Our top 6 revenue producers in here, and I guess one of the things that we'll see, I think, when we get the energy credits worked out is that they would pop back into this. But as of right now, jet fuel, land lease for non-aeronautical, landing fees for non-air carriers or general aviation, rental car concessions, land lease rental, and then earnings on investment are what makes up our top 6. But like I said, when we figure out the energy credits, I anticipate that would come back and the earnings on investment would follow. But our earnings on investment are outpacing what was expected based on our reserve level. Any questions on this? For the expenses, so the personnel, the main one, overall we are on track, and the total for expenditures is at the top. So we have about 38% remaining to meet the budget, so we appear to be on track. The one here, the overtime, 18% remaining, we are a little bit ahead, which is not a surprise given the winter that we had. Typically we activate our snow plan and call the staff in 3 or 4 times. This year it was 7. So when we do that, we have a pretty significant response with the new contract, the number of staff coming in. So that part does not surprise me, but we'll be on track to meet the year given what we have left. The transfers to the general fund, those are scheduled based on finance taking them out. And then our operating purchases, we have room for purchasing of the jet fuel, and then insurance is one that happens in chunks. So even though percentage-wise it works out at this point, if that next chunk comes out, when you see the next financial report, we might be closer to the 100% because those will go in large batches.
Is there a reason for that discrepancy in the jet fuel purchase? It seems to be.
The jet fuel purchases, Not necessarily, we buy a lot in the very beginning of the year, we'll buy a lot at the end of the year. We have seen, compared to last year, and we'll see the curvature, we're following our normal trajectory of jet fuel. We have been below for the last couple of months in the total gallons. We reached out and talked to World Fuel about that, and that seems to be something that is being seen on a larger scale, given economic uncertainties. In terms of the projection, we're still following and ahead in terms of our revenue, but the gallons for the past number of months have been down slightly, and I'll point that out when we get there.
Mr. Chairman, so the expenditures, that top blue line, that's the total,
Correct.
and the breakdown is underneath it. So right now, we're 38% behind where we should be in terms of spending, not in terms of revenue, right? So we have about, well, this is of the 8th. So we have about 25% left in the year, and we're 38% below what we thought we were gonna spend. So if that trend continues, we'll have extra money in.
Carry surplus.
Yeah. Yes, oh, it's not the next slide. It's coming
Which is
shortly.
why I was asking about the jet fuel.
Yes.
That's 50%, that's substantial.
Right. So if we save money there, then it's less that we spend.
Right,
That
exactly.
goes to the final conversion.
Right.
The top expenses.
Which, the reason I point that out, and I think the town should be very aware of, we're an enterprise.
Correct, yes.
And for the sake of the general public, they have to realize that we don't cost the taxpayers any money. We run, I mean, we basically pay for what we bring in and everything that's associated with this airport. We run our own business, so to speak, and I think that's critical. Some people think that, we're a burden on the taxpayer. We're not. We don't get a dime from the tax base. We basically generate everything that, what's the total budget that we, round numbers?
Just short of 13 million.
You know, that 13 million is generated by Cape Cod Gateway Airport, and our expenses go against that. It goes against nothing to do with town finance. So,
Right, and then with transfers to the general fund, we pay for the services that we
Correct.
use from the town.
Right,
HR,
for example, we use
finances.
HR, we use tech, whatever else we use, and they give us a fair price and we pay for that service. So, I mean, we really run a very tight ship. It's like running a business. I mean, it really is.
It is.
Mike, you said that, it's one of the things you weren't aware. I mean, we really are a business of ourselves with different buckets of what it is that we need to do, from safety to, safety being the number one. We have budget, we have rentals, we own a mall, we own, you name it. We sell jet fuel. I mean, we're a pretty sophisticated company. Not, once again, providing incredible services and economic opportunity to the town, but really not costing the town any money.
With around 30 people.
With 30 people, yeah, we're tight.
If I may just make
Yes, sir.
one comment, since we're going over this stuff. For the viewers, they need to understand that this is cash basis accounting. So when you look at jet fuel, that is the amount of money we spent to purchase fuel. It isn't directly correlated to the revenue that we've received at this point in time. That includes what we sold and what's in our fuel tanks to be sold. And that goes along with everything else. Some of the earlier discussions about the credits for the electric energy. Part of it is probably because of slow receipt of reports in the town that hasn't been booked to the accounting system yet. In a publicly held company, we would be on an accrual basis and we would be making adjustments for those things.
Thank you. Yeah.
So the top 6 expenses, we have the jet fuel for resale, our salaries for the permanent staff, retirement, the property fire liability, overtime, and then electricity. Electricity is one we've talked about where we're seeing that creep up everywhere. But those are our top 6 expenses at this point. Jet fuel, so you can see, and you'll see as we move through this, the top part is our revenue for the fiscal year so far for the fiscal year. So you can see that fiscal 25 year-to-date versus 24, we're up about 21%, or an increase of 1.3 million. Jet fuel sales gallons, we're very even. We're only up 0.5%, right? So this has to do with the fact that we're still on track with the number of gallons we projected to sell, But as I was mentioning, we've seen below, and you can see the bottom box, we were about 9,000 gallons less during March 25 versus March 24. So as I said, we reached out to World Fuel, they're our provider, to talk about this and see what they were seeing. And they were saying that this is the standard of what they're seeing in the area right now. We're not an outlier. Because that top box really relates to the fact that we changed how we priced the fuel last year. And so we wanted to make sure that we weren't pricing ourselves out of the market on the backside. So coordinated with World Fuel, that gave us comfort that we were not doing that, we were in the norm. So our pricing strategy still remains, but it would be why you can see the fact that our gallons are fairly flat, but our revenue is up that percentage. So I just wanted to take a few seconds to walk through that, and then if anyone has any questions on that piece.
Any questions? No. Thank you.
So you can see our gallons so far for the year, 1.153. We projected, I want to say 1.250 for the year. So I anticipate we will beat that number just based on the natural curvature as we move through April, May, and June. The largest fuel months are July and August, but April, May, and June will bring us up through there and put us up between the high and where we projected as we go. But you can see how our fuel sales have grown over the years here. And then this is the course of the month, so you can see, as I said, in the early part of the fiscal year, we were outpacing. In the summertime, there was a lot of activity, and then we kind of followed the group, and then we're right kind of there for the last couple of years of that top set of curves. But we follow the same curvature every year just based on the seasonality of Cape Cod.
Hopefully that will change someday so that line is.
That would be nice. We'd like to see that. The car rental concessions, this is where you'll see there are, oops, I hit it when I did that. So these numbers are through March 31st, just the way that the reporting works for this versus the other numbers. So you will notice a slight difference between the car rental share for this current fiscal year here and in the earlier figure. It's about $25,000, and it has to do with, we have 4 concessionaires, 2 of the reports were in there, 2 were not in this one, so that's the discrepancy there. But I just wanted to point it out, so we put it in the red text at the bottom. And then by car company, the breakdown, and we follow the pretty similar path with Enterprise, Hertz, Avis, and then Budget. Seems to be the normal breakdown year by year in terms of leaders in the market.
Is there a reason that Hertz over the years has come out on top?
They're number 2, they try harder.
That was Avis.
That was Avis.
Well, Hertz has always been number one.
Hertz, number one.
O.J. Simpson running through the airport.
Wow.
That's all. That's what he used to do.
No comment.
So for the for the car rentals, they each have their individual operation, and I think part of it has to do with their loyalty programs in terms of who uses the cars. The main thing we can see though is the growth in their operations. And then our last slide here, the operations. I printed this because I could not read it at that angle. So you can see the total passengers for the fiscal year, 36,418. So we need about 3,600 more to meet our projection for the budget, which as we move through with a more robust Cape Air schedule and then the first few flights of the air carriers, we should be on track to do that. And I did just make the note just to show the impact that American and the service, the enhanced Cape Air service had. At the same time last year, we were at 26,600 passengers. So we've seen growth in that, which makes sense with the American operations. And then in airport operations, so far for the fiscal year, 44,776. So we are about 75% of the way through what our projection was. And again, I just wanted to point out that at the same time last year, we were at 35,659. So again, we're seeing growth in the operations, which are partly those training flights and other operations that are growing. So that's a good thing to see. And then the bottom section there, the fuel, you can see that 1250 number that I was citing earlier, and where we are with the 153,506. So the 97,000 gallons or so to make up the fiscal year, I feel like we'll beat that by the end of June.
Matt, that 36,418
Mhm.
only takes into account those passengers that are going through our terminal, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What about the private planes that land next door? And there's lots of passengers planing, deplaning and enplaning. Is there a way that we can capture those numbers? Because they're still using our facilities.
So that, I can see Mark shaking his head.
I'm trying.
I know. Sorry about that.
The FAA tracks in plane passengers through the terminal. We get a report every year,
Right.
preliminary report, and then we have to go through it. A lot of that has to do with how tickets are sold, but they track based on a passenger facility charge piece for the passengers that are going through the terminal. The private air transportation, one of the benefits of private air transportation is it is private air transportation. There's some security with it, right? And so tracking the number of passengers on those flights can be a very challenging thing. It would ultimately take the FBO noting how many people got off the plane each time. There isn't a method where when an airline, they sell a ticket and they provide a report to the FAA, this is how many tickets we're carrying, the common carriage of passengers. With the private air operators, if you rent a Gulfstream to fly from here to there, you know, it could be you and a group of people.
No, I understand that. All I'm trying to do is get credit for the unknown, because those folks do utilize the services of our airport. God forbid, if there's a problem, if there's an issue, if there's a concern, it's our staff, it's our people. So, you know, even though those numbers, you know, it says 36,418, one of the things we're always trying to do is increase that level, if you will.
Sure.
To what it was back in our heyday. That's probably never going to happen. But nonetheless, there are lots of other folks using our airport that aren't included, even though they are passengers on private planes. And if we can't get the numbers, I at least want the public to be aware that there are other groups bringing in passengers.
Yeah, I mean, I think in activity that gets reported, I think the Aero Club was in the top 10 in terms of activity at the airport. And that represents probably 15 pilots. So, you know, and that's just one of, you know, a couple hundred airplanes. So, you know, there's a lot of, these are a little bit misleading in
That's my
some
point.
ways. It's my point.
So, Mr. Chairman, the reason why they are the way they are is because the FAA only gives you credit for commercial
Oh, I
operations.
understand that.
One, but they also give you credit for airport operations, right?
Correct.
Those are the two numbers that drive how the FAA treats this airport. We're doing better on commercial operations. We need to do better on airport operations. We need to get that number up. And that's more important than counting how many people are on those private planes.
Well, you know, I look at it from this perspective. If someone lands in one of those private planes, they're on our airport, we don't count them. But yet if they walk over from next door and they get on one of our planes, now they're part of our members. I'm just trying to point out to the general public that these numbers are a little bit misleading in terms of really the total number of folks who are accessing the airport. I'm trying to put not necessarily a positive spin, but a reality spin on what these numbers represent. That's all.
What's the population of Barnstable?
45,000 approximately.
That's it.
Pretty good passenger count up there.
Yeah.
I mean, so far,
Year round, summertime, and
right?
triples.
So far, we've moved the population of Barnstable. This
That's
fiscal
one way
year.
to look at
That's a
it.
good way to look at it.
Yeah.
And just to the point of capturing all of the pieces, you know, these are numbers of the ticketed passengers on air carrier flights through the terminal. The one place where it would get picked up, the part that you're talking about, not an account number, but the state will do an economic impact study of the airport every so often. They're in the last one was 2019, typically is every 5 years, it's been a little bit delayed, but they're in the process of a state aviation system plan, and that'll include an economic impact update. And they come and look holistically at the airport and the impact. So it will capture the private traffic that comes in, not in the sense of this is how many passengers went in there, but based on the number of operations and then the way that they move through that, they do outreach to different groups. They would quantify it. So when we see the economic impact for the airport, it would reflect those numbers. Again, not a direct count, but it does give us credit for the fact that these other things happen at the airport.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
I just have a question.
Margaret?
Just to clarify, so if you have a round trip, you're counted twice in that figure?
The first part is enplanements and the second part is deplanement.
Right.
So you count as enplanement on the way out and deplanement. No problem, it's good. It's a good question.
Yes.
You know, if you go one way, you count as you're either arriving here or leaving here. But a round trip, you did it twice, which would be good. I like those.
Exactly.
I
Okay,
did that a lot.
moving on then.
Sure. All right, next up.
Next up is the terminal seasonal structure update.
Terminal seasonal structure update.
Thank you for this map, by the way.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Good presentation.
Commissioners, in that package, it's really worth taking a look at. There's a lot of detail that will give you a lot of comfort when you look at it.
Thank you.
So we put together a little almost Gantt chart with the schedule of where we are. We're underway in terms of our tent here. So the pedestrian ramp modifications were installed in March. That part is completed. Our fence bid closes tomorrow. We're on track with that. We anticipate that we'll have 2 bids based on the communication we've had with bidders. Hopefully we have more, but we should be good there, and that is to install from the beginning of March through the 23rd of March. The tent permitting is in process. I anticipate it'll wrap up before the end of this month, but we just left it there for the whole period. Our electric work will bring the electricity out for the HVAC units. That was a pivot as we went into the modification of the tent. We were able to get quotes for that, move it forward, get the purchase order issued, and I've been exchanging voicemails in between our inspection sessions today with the vendor, so to get that nailed down. One of the components of the electrical that we just are working to coordinate is we'll actually have to de-energize this building during the overnight. So just making sure that the tenants are aware of that, the town IT is aware of that, and our security system provider is aware of that, so that when we re-energize, when they connect to the panels, and for obvious reasons we have to de-energize, but when they reconnect and we repower everything, that the gates work, that all the computer system works, just to make sure. So we're on track for that. The tent is due for installation on May 12th. That'll take anywhere from 3 to 5 days of installation. Our security system, the PO has been issued for that. It's with the vendor. Security system modifications to do the camera work we discussed, to put in the access control. The vendor for that, CGL, is our security system vendor. They have their purchase order and they're queued up for the first 2 weeks of June, overlaid with the PA system. The very last piece will be the delivery of the temporary restrooms, which will be June 15th. And then Mike and I have been going over the game plan. The plan will be on Monday, June 15th. Everything is up and running and operational, so we have 2 days in case there's any modifications that we need to make sure those are made. But right now we're progressing through on track with all of those. Last month at the commission meeting, we did the vote to authorize airport management to do the bid award and the contract for the fence at a not to exceed number of $100,000. So the only thing that we may need here is if the bids come back, knock on wood, I don't think they will, but if they were to come back over the 100,000, I would ask for a special meeting just to approve that so we can get the quick turnaround. But the vendors understand the time schedule we're on. They understand our approved equal process, so if something is going to take longer, we can get something in that will meet the requirements, and we'll continue moving forward. But right now, we're in good position on the seasonal structure. The other thing that I just wanted to show with this, which we discussed, was the picnic tables. Last time, I know that was a question. Picnic tables are fairly expensive, as we learned. So we went through and looked at them. These ones from Amazon were the ones we identified. Obviously, they were pricey for the 4 of them, a little over $8,000. We went with the commercial grade for liability purposes. We didn't want to have ones that were going to be falling apart or causing splinters or anything like that. And the other part with the octagon shape is that even though these folks have been screened, they are still outside of the AOA security fence. So we wanted to make sure that the tables wouldn't easily be slid over to the fence, that someone could use it to gain access into the airfield. So the octagon shape helps with the movement and how they could be repositioned or stacked. So we found a number. Ultimately, they're all essentially in the same price range here, and I just wanted to kind of give the overview on that and see if there was any additional kind of concerns or thoughts on it before we move forward. We could eliminate the picnic tables altogether if we wanted to, but on nice Cape Cod days, I think we can leverage the fact that we're going to have this kind of unique outdoor space when you're post-security to be able to be kind of out there, enjoying the Cape Cod weather. The tent itself will have AC, HVAC, so that'll be like you're inside of a structure, but if we have the ability to have these picnic tables in the parking lot, it looks like these ones from Amazon, which we can get in the bluish color that are in the never fade type of material, are the option that we would move forward with. I just wanted to, we said we'd come back and look at other options and see what we found, and it appears that they're all fairly similar. I don't know if anybody had feedback on that or questions.
I don't have any issues, I just want to make sure they're here on time. And if one of those can't deliver it, then we'll hire a carpenter to build them, local.
We'll have them on time.
Out of the trucks,
I'm sorry,
out of the trucks.
out of trucks, yeah.
So that is the seasonal tent structure. Any questions on that?
Anyone have an issue, question? No?
All right, thank you.
Oh, I do, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. The controller parking, is that gonna be interrupted by this fence? And
So-
have you made arrangements?
Yes, so they will actually be able to park inside the gated area now.
Okay.
So it's actually a benefit for them.
Good, good.
They'll be able to park in there. They have to leave a certain area open for if there's a fire truck access needed, but they'll be able to park there. I would anticipate we'll probably add some millings area in the back, and then after the tower HVAC, I think it would be wise, Mike and I kind of touched on this a little bit early on, to look at maybe reformatting that and giving them some formal parking spaces in there.
Good.
Ultimately, that'll require a fence realignment, but I think towards the end of the tower HVAC project, where that fence is gonna be modified to meet their construction safety and phasing plan, there'd be an opportunity to do that. And then they have backups too, right? So like say there's a mechanical issue with the gate, they have an area they can park right outside, and then the backup, they'll have the same thing that any of the terminal employees would have, which is the hang tag and access into the main lot.
Okay, great.
So we did make provisions for them, and I think they'll enjoy parking inside the fence more now.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Next up is the airline update. So we discussed American, the flights commence June 19th. That's really the driver for our seasonal structure timeline. JetBlue, the flight commences on June 26th. Cape Air does have a more robust spring schedule. Flights to Boston, JFK, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, so it's good to see them continuing in that. Right now, we have not had any further discussions with Breeze, but we want to keep that on there, make sure Mike has their contacts so that we can keep progressing with that. And we anticipate that for the May meetings, we'll have the marketing campaign for the season that will roll out beginning of June through the season for the commission. And then for electric aviation, no specific updates from Beta or Archer at this point. The smart grid program, MassDOT Aeronautics continues to work on that and progress that forward. And the EV make-ready chargers, which are the stations that will be installed in the main lot here, that is grant funded through the town. We're still expecting spring, summer, although some of that has to do with grant funding for those programs. So the town is really pursuing that. We're working with Sean Hogan from the town manager's office, and he's spearheading that. But we're
Matt, where in the
still,
lot will they be?
they will be on the, if you went into the lot towards the left.
The west side?
Yes. Yeah.
Will there need to be one of those handicapped access parking spaces?
Will there need to be a handicapped?
Where our handicap parking is now, would there be one in that area?
Good point.
That is a good point. I don't know that we considered mixing the handicap spaces with the.
Is that an ADD requirement?
I'm gonna have to take an IOU on that, and we
Yeah.
will find out. That's a good question.
Good question.
Or if you could put it, if there was a handicapped access space and then regular parking space, put it at a midway point that it could.
Right, it could serve both.
Yeah.
Right, because we should be able to serve both.
Good point, Mark.
Good. Thank you for saying that.
Get a start.
I don't know that we considered that, and we will do that.
There is a town committee that does deal with that. Any kind of,
Okay.
any kind of special kind of service. I know, serving on the licensing board, they come to well, not every meeting, but many of the meetings to make sure that if a new restaurant is opening, that there are enough handicap spaces, they are appropriately marked, they are appropriately striped. We take it very serious.
They do come and check that.
Yeah.
Not only for our facility, but for the tenants as well.
All right, all right.
So we'll reach out about that, and when we come back for the next meeting, we will have some details. Thank you.
Good.
Next up is projects. Really want to thank Chris for everything he did. Projects have been moving fast and
Speaking
furious.
of Chris, before the end, his pictures in the bed with his wife and the places that he's buying, so I'll share for our audience. They're buying Smuggler's ice cream down on corner of 134 and 6A, so if you want summer ice cream this summer, go see Chris at his new ice cream shop. It's the old Bank of America on the corner there.
Yes, we're excited for him, but we do miss him. This has been a learning experience for Mike as we move through these. But we'll start with the terminal apron hard stands. This is really the one that we are the furthest along in with the most moving pieces. So just going back to recover where we were here, we completed environmental testing of the pavement, the subsurface soils. That all came back as non-detect for PFAS, which is good. That helped us there. Our original game plan was we were going to do this in 2 phases of building 3 and then build 1. We modified that to be 2 and then 2. We did that for a couple reasons. One is funding driven, the other one is based on the cure time for that. We anticipate that we'll get a grant award for this project in the August-September timeframe, but we're not totally sure. And we obviously do not want to construct this during air carrier operations, because these are the spots that the air carriers use, right? So our goal would be to get that grant in and build this fall, September, October, November. Then it sits for the winter, has the spring, and then the air carriers start. If we have to wait until the spring, just based on weather or that grant award coming in long, obviously to build those and then have the cure time. The building is only a 50-day project, but to have the cure time to make the strength of the concrete, because it grows over time. As we learned today, Mike is very knowledgeable on this, right? But as it grows over time, that could impact our ability to use the spots in the spring. So we wanted to be conscious to that. But we wanted to protect ourselves in terms of the bid price that we received to make sure we weren't going to be looked at like we need a change order if it's constructed in the spring. So our bid is very specific. It's contingent on appropriation, it's contingent on the grant award, and it's for building in either the fall or the spring. If we did need to go to the spring and we build 2, we're painting our 4th spot this year, so even if that happened and we weren't able to use the first 2 spots, we would have 2 spots available to be able to use for American and JetBlue. So it keeps us moving along. We've also seen a significant rise in the cost for this particular project, mainly related to concrete. Obviously, that's the major driver of this. At first, that was just an increase in the cost of concrete. More recently, it's been economic uncertainty and no one really having a good idea. And talking with the FAA engineers, they're seeing this in a lot of projects. Based on that, we're seeing construction piece higher. We've also been working with the FAA and Airport Solutions Group to refine the project. When Katie came to present this project, she mentioned that this would include the update to our AC DBE plan, which is the Airport Concession Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Plan. That plan is going to cost about $18,000 to $20,000. The FAA has also asked us to include the update to our regular DBE plan, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, a 3-year goal, and our Title VI, which is Civil Rights Community Participation Plan. So those were not originally intended to be part of the project. It's going to raise that amount up. The cost of concrete is going up, and then as we got into refining the scope, we saw that our initial design for this was smaller concrete pads. As we talked about, we went to ones that would fit the family of aircraft and fit the tug. So there's material testing that's needed for the concrete, and that number did not necessarily keep pace. So our contingency would be able to handle any one of those things, but certainly not all three. So I've been working with, and I really need to say thank you to Amber Patterson, the Chief Procurement Officer of the town, because she is doing incredible work for us and everybody else in the town with the fence and with this and with our tower HVAC, and Mark Milne, the town finance director. This was is our CIP project for fiscal year 26. So in working with Mark, that was originally scheduled to be have a second read this Thursday at the town council. He requested that we hold it, because we're out to bid right now, to get the actual construction cost, which makes sense, and then come back with the actual number rather than getting an appropriation and having to go back again. So that made sense. Amber was able to queue up the procurement to match that, and then we've worked with our FAA folks to line up so our grant app will hit at the right time. So at this point, I anticipate that that project is going to come in. We had said $990,000 or $1 million. It's likely it'll be about 1.2 million, given the additional with the plans and then the cost of concrete. But that's our best guess. Ultimately, it's going to be up to bids to see what we get for construction costs. So if it comes in above the 990, we'll return to the Finance Subcommittee and the Commission for approval for that. And then Mark Milne will have it queued up to go to the Town Council for our appropriation in the May-June timeframe. Doesn't want to conflict with the regular operating budget, but wants to move it through at that point, which makes sense. So we worked through all of those pieces. In scoping, we were looking at this project as a typical FAA-funded project. This year, they're paying 95% of projects. The state is paying 2.5%, and we're paying 2.5%. That was our plan. The FAA, in looking at it and reviewing it, has determined that they will fund 85% of the project. Based on there's good news.
No, okay.
You gotta start so they'll fund 85% of the project based on the fact that they had prior investment in the apron in a seal coating project that was done a few years ago, and in the initial construction of it that they've not realized the full 20-year lifespan of asphalt. So even though we're upgauging what can go there and we're improving it, they still need to see their investment. So we took that and we worked with it. We made sure we were getting the right federal share, and then we went and leveraged our good working relationship with MassDOT Aeronautics and said, hey, instead of splitting this 50-50, could we do this as a typical ASMP project, Airport Security and Maintenance Project, which is an 80-20 split? And they said, yes, let's do that. So what we've done is we've gone from, instead of 95, 2.5, and 2.5, we've gone to 85, 12, and 3. So it's a 0.5% increase for us. Ultimately, if it's $1 million project, it's the difference of $25,000 and $30,000. So we've queued all those pieces up. It was kind of fast and furious as we moved through there. But this will keep us on track to construct this fall, so that next season, when the air carriers come in, the first 2 spaces are complete, and then we can look at the second 2 spaces. Hopefully we continue to have growth, and we can look at potentially a 5th space. But all of those pieces kind of lined up, and Mike has been, this was started before he arrived. Chris and I were working on this, and Katie, and then as we move through, Mike has seen a lot of the project process with this one. So that is where we are at this point on the hard stand. So I'm happy to answer any hard stand questions.
Just a point of information, so for the public that is watching this, when we talk $1 million to put the hard stands in, we're really looking at less than 3% in terms of what it's going to cost us, because federal funding and state funding will kick in. Secondly, when we talk hard stands, for the sake of our audience that probably doesn't know what they are, I mean, we up here know what they are in terms of being able to withstand the weight of a plane.
Sure. Yes, and I appreciate the question. So a hard stand is essentially a giant concrete block that the aircraft can sit on, that's designed to hold a higher load than regular asphalt on the apron or the ramp. So the idea is it's a more stable base for the tug that's moving the aircraft and the aircraft. That's a great question.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Matt.
No problem. Tower HVAC. So the OPM agreement It's in progress. Chris had started coordinating that. We did a selection committee a little while ago. It took some time to get the information. So Mike and I will be engaging that firm next week, get the details worked out to be able to come to the commission for that during May. The project itself will go out to bid tomorrow at noontime. We're very excited about this. This has been a long process to get this rescoped back out to bid. So it'll be out tomorrow. The filed sub-bids will be due on May 14th, and the general contractor bids due on June 4th. And then we will be ready to move forward on that project. So that has been a significant effort. And again, thank you to Chris for all of the coordination he did there with ASG and with Gensler, our architect, and procurement to move this to where we are. We're very excited about getting that project rolling.
So the tower will have air conditioning this summer?
Well, tower has air conditioning right now. It's regularly serviced. And as we did, if we need to, we can do the same rental procedure we did, which Mike remembers. We have our modified door, get the hoses and the units, and we can plug those in and be ready to go.
I just want to make sure our
if needed.
controls are comfortable. Sitting 80 feet up in the air.
Next up is the ARF maintenance facility floor drain. So our next step on this one, obviously that building sits inside of our one of our PFAS disposal sites, being where the fire trucks are stored. So our next step there will be a scope of work and a fee that will come for an amendment for HRP, our environmental engineers. Brian Massa just recently sent that over. Mike and I have a call with him next week to go over that. But we'll have to do some investigation work there to determine how the materials will need to be dealt with for the concrete floor and the soil just being in the disposal site as we get ready to do that. So on this one, that's really our next step. So the commission should expect to see that scope from HRP for the PFAS investigation, and then ASG for the planning to actually design the project on an upcoming agenda. But our next step is really the environmental investigation.
So this drain improvement project, anything that drains in from the floor, do they go into like a tight tank and then they get pumped, or where does it go?
So the drains now, there's one central drain that runs down the building. It goes through an oil water separator, and then it goes to the sewer system through a permitted connection. So what we would like to do with this project is, when that was designed, it was built, and the floor drain is perpendicular to the path of travel. It's not a big deal when you have pickup trucks or even our snow equipment, but with the fire trucks with 1,500 gallons of water, it's a very heavy piece of equipment. So every time it goes over the drain, there's a force on the side. So over time, it's wearing out and creating unevenness and trip hazard that we're going to look to fix. And obviously this will change the design in that part so that the trucks won't be crossing over the drain. And then there's a pipe that carries that down to the oil water separator and out to the sewer system. So we would be working up to the oil water separator. That's regularly checked, maintained, and we pump that out on a regular environmental process.
And then the rest goes over to the processing. Thank you.
Next up, the flight departure procedure analysis. So, recognizing this is a priority based on our prior discussions, I've asked ASG to provide the current scope, and Mike and I have a scheduled meeting next week, as I mentioned, with Katie to get the update there so we can get the next steps to move this forward. She was working on that, so that's one of our agenda items. Make sure we understand that, and then we're going to have to come back to the commission because there'll be a cost associated with that, but we need to start moving in that regard. So that was really the catalyst for that outreach.
Yeah, I have a question. I was just going to make a comment that's a major priority from town administrator in Yarmouth, and have real concerns. And so, as I said, and even looking at then ultimately what happens in terms of the participation and contributions and things about the process as it goes along from citizens, and also town of Yarmouth has Ron Price and everyone they want to have involved. Thank you.
And then the last project, the environmental review. The FAA had previously put that on hold as they were working through their executive orders. They've been able to do that, so they were able to provide us their comments on the draft that we submitted. So those have been returned to us. We got those earlier this week, I believe, and Epsilon, who was our consultant on that, is working on turning that around now to get the revised document back to the FAA for their federal decision. So we anticipate in the next probably 2 weeks we'll have that turned around. And then hopefully by the May meeting we would be in a position to report on the federal decision part of that. That one has been out there for a little while. And then the last on the list is just PFAS Public Involvement Plan. Our next status report is due in April this month. Brian Massa from HRP is doing that as one of his on-call tasks with the reporting of our current process, and then obviously our next one for October will be able to reflect those new wells that we're going to install down beyond the Morhar wells towards Yarmouth, as well as new wells we installed up gradient of our capped area, the deployment area along Taxway Bravo. So we'll have that, and we're planning for our next public information meeting, which would be November 2025.
Now, jumping back to the projects, where were we with the hiring of a project director?
That's the OPM selection.
So the OPM for the tower HVAC is specific to the HVAC job.
I'm referring to Chris's job, he was overseeing, weren't we going to replace?
Right, so, and that was the direction, we were gonna do the manager first and then
Right.
assistant manager and project manager. We could put that out now if you'd like, but I think the prior thought was you wanted to fill the manager
I'd like to
position.
be in the process, just so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle from a timing perspective, because these are all projects that are pending and, you know, all of a sudden they're gonna be here. I don't wanna then decide that we need a project director.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I think the thought process, though, is that we wanted to have the airport manager on board.
Oh,
to
absolutely.
Be involved in the selection process.
Absolutely, but I at least want,
Yeah.
if we have to go out for bids or anything else, whatever the case might be, I mean, the homework part of it, if you will, I'd like to have that in place. But the actual hiring, I want whoever the new airport manager is, coupled with the new assistant manager, to be involved in that process heavily.
And that makes sense. We did, Sue is queued up for that. We reviewed,
Okay.
and obviously that the new manager can do this, but we reviewed the job description, the posting that we had used last time,
Good.
to make sure it was accurate and reflective of everything. So it is ready to go.
Good.
She'll be able to
Okay,
launch
I just
that.
want to make sure we're on top of it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And relative to the PFAS, which will be November of 2025, that will be in the hands of the new team, whoever that might be. Okay. All right, any questions from anyone to my right or left? Anyone from any member of the commission? Not hearing any? Okay, Matt, thank you very much for a great report, great overview. That was extensive. If you change your mind, there's still time.
I'm trying to get a chain around the chair here for you, but it hasn't worked so far.
Keep trying over there.
I
Chris.
will.
Okay, finally, item number 11, this is announcement. Are there any comments from any commissioner that she would like to make?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I believe this is gonna be your last commission meeting, so, I'd just like to thank you, and I'm sure that all the commissioners feel the same way.
Right.
You have been exceptional, you really have, and just the way you handled all the updates tonight is the best evidence of what an incredible presence and the level of expertise you have brought to this airport, to this job, and to this commission, so we want to thank you for your
Yeah, I would,
continued excellence.
on behalf of the entire commission, I was going to bring that up. I would echo that same comment. I mean, we welcome Michael with open arms, but we really do hate to see Katie leave, we hate to see you leave. I mean, we have a terrific team here, and, you know, as you move forward, we wish you nothing but good fortune, but nonetheless, thank you for a very comprehensive and well-structured reporting process. You know, I always feel confident that when I leave meetings, you know, from the entire staff, from, you know, our noise-related issues that Christina does on a regular basis across the board, I always feel confident when I leave a meeting here at the airport that things are in good hands, that we're moving the whole team in the town forward in a very, very positive way, in a very, very responsible way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So Mike, you can gear up because May will be
And have you checked out the size, have you checked out the size of his shoes you have to fill?
We'll work on, so Mike isn't just gonna be to the wolves, but one of the things on our agenda for next week is to start the meeting preparation for both finance and infrastructure to see it. He was part of planning for this meeting, even though we didn't have any formal new or old business, just to be part of it and see it. So I'm
Well,
fully
Michael had a strong
confident.
presence. Even though your chair was sunk all the way down as far as you go, you are a much solid guy.
Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, are there any other matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair? There aren't any. So I think we can bring this to adjournment, and our next meeting is scheduled for May 20th, 2025, where Mike Nelson will be obviously working with us to make that meeting as effective as others have been in the past. So with that being said, I will entertain if someone would make a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any
Second by
discussion?
Brent.
All those, thank you, Brent. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is a vote. Meeting is adjourned.